Hello, 7th. This is a Soul Studies 7 lesson that we have that will begin on April 20th. So this is Monday, April 20th lesson for Soul Studies 7. This has been recorded and posted early. You don't need to do it right away. You don't need to do it until the 20th. If you want to get it over with, I have it posted here just so I can get ahead of where I need to be so we're good to go for that day. So as you're watching this, I hope everybody had a wonderful restful break and had a great joyous Easter. Remember, there are extra credit masses for participation. I hope we have a lot of individuals who were able to do so. We'd like to begin with our Soul Studies new unit moving forward. If you haven't yet seen the corrections that I gave you for your assessment on the previous unit on James Monroe, please go ahead and take a look. We are now going to move into the new unit here, 6.1, Jackson wins the presidency. And if anybody would like to follow along with the lesson, you can turn to your textbook page 302. You can leave it open there, and we're going to go back and forth. But everybody is going to need a new note sheet, so you're going to need a new note sheet with the topic as Andrew Jackson wins the presidency, or just Andrew Jackson is fine. Okay, and we're going to get to the essential question in a moment. Before we do, please remember you can go ahead and type this. You can go ahead and print a note sheet. I have them posted here, or you can go ahead and write this out in pencil on a separate sheet of paper. Go ahead and use a straight edge and have the questions on the left. Remember, if you're typing it, break it into sections with question, bullets, question, and so forth. So let's begin. Here's something to think about. You necessarily don't need to write this down, but let's think about this for a moment. How might the common person think differently than someone who is rich and well-born? Someone born into privilege. So how might just a common individual such as you and I think differently than someone who lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, who has everything that they need and want, just everything handed to them, right? What might the common white male, perhaps one that does not own land, okay, want in the first half of the 1800s? So I have this little illustration. Here's the common person. Common person with the dollar bill, right? Our friend George Washington on the dollar bill. I view the world as, and then the rich person has a bag of money, all different sums, $20 bills, $5, hundreds, ones, and he says, I view the world as. This is something I want, these are two questions I want you to consider moving forward into this unit. So think about that for a moment, okay? The essential question is as follows. You're going to want to jot that on the top. How has the age of Jackson impacted our nation? How has the age of Jackson impacted our nation? You could see our great friend here who is very, very familiar to us by now, right? We're very familiar about his great efforts for the nation, great efforts which turned into, in many ways, very, very ruthless efforts. We know his role as a general. We know his role just previously, guys. A lot of you need to make sure you reflect on this correctly. When the United States gained the territory of Florida, when Jackson invades Spanish Florida, and he goes in really full force and nothing left behind. It shows that really ruthless aggression. Many of you said, well, that was really good. Well, in the sense of the United States being able to gain a territory and grow in size, sure. But the way individuals who were previous on the land were treated, I'm not sure if you would say that as good. So always look at both sides of history here. We know our friend here is on the $20 bill. So if you look in your wallet, you have a $20 bill, you can see him on it. This has been a topic of debate for many years. Should Andrew Jackson still be on the $20 bill after everything we know about him? Well, that's not up to me to decide. That's up to you to decide. Let's look at both parts of history, what we know, okay? And you could come up with that decision on your own. A lot of individuals don't know, the history behind these individuals who are on the money they use on a daily basis. But good and bad, let's learn it. Let's stick to facts and let's move forward. So I'm going to read to you this little paragraph on 302. If you want to follow along, you can. So during the early 1800s, a growing spirit of democracy changed the political system and affected American ideas about social classes. The main cause stemmed from the influence of Andrew Jackson. He was an American politician during the time who supported expanding democratic rights. From the time of his first campaign for president in 1824 until his death in 1845, he dominated American politics. Jackson's policies had a significant effect on issues such as voting rights and the way in which government functions. This period is also known as the Age of Jackson. The Age of Jackson, indeed, it will be indeed an important part of history we need to know about. So let's get right to it. Feel free to have the text open. I'm going to go back and forth, but please follow along carefully so you can get the full experience from this unit. Okay. What is the Age of Jackson on the left? Or what was the Age of Jackson on the left? What was the Age of Jackson on the left? So the United States would change forever. The United States is going to change during this time forever. Okay, and it's going to be known as the Age of Jackson that this occurs in. So, excuse me, what I'd like you to know is this. Some of you might say, Mr. A, James Monroe is the 5th president. Andrew Jackson's the 7th. Where is the 6th? Okay, guys, some of you may have beat me to that, thinking about where is John Quincy Adams here, because we know he's the 6th president. Why did we skip ahead? Well, I skipped ahead for a little bit, but I will be referencing John Quincy Adams in this lesson as well. You may want to jot his name down, John Quincy Adams, as the 6th president, Jackson the 7th. Here is how we are going to evolve more into the United States as we know it today. Okay? So this is the Age of Jackson. Remember, I had you think about the question, the common man, the rich man, right? The 1820s and 1830s. What do you think of that time period that we're going to enter right now? There's going to be a greater power given to the common man, okay? States ended the property requirement to vote. Remember before you had to be a white male property owner to vote, okay? The common men would not be able to vote back then because you may have some individuals, white men, who were unable to own property, who didn't own property. So if the property was not in your name, the house, the property was not in your name, you were not able to vote, okay? Women still, of course, not going to be able to vote, and there will not be, equal rights yet to have all the vote. We're referencing here the 1820s and 1830s. You're going to have the common men at the time were white men of the United States, right? Sorry to word it that way, but that's the only way I can really explain it. That's history. We need to know it as factual based. So the common men will now be able to vote, okay? The requirement to own property is no longer there. I mean, if you own property and you're a white male property owner, you could still vote, but the common men could now vote. Jackson grew up as this common man. So Jackson knew he would have the ability to reach out to the common men of the United States during the 1820s, provoke great interest. They would in turn vote for him because, a lot of times, even elections today, candidates try to relate to the people, and the closer they can relate to the people, the more the people feel that that candidate is a part of them, the more the people may want to vote for that particular candidate. That's then Okay, that's in between, and that's also now. So throughout history, the candidate trying to connect to the common people is essential. And it really goes to the forefront right here. And it's going to increase the power of the presidency. The power of the presidency under Andrew Jackson is going to increase at levels that it's never been to before. Well, think about what Andrew Jackson was able to do before even stepping foot in the White House, before his name even going on the ballot, right? It's that increase of power. Wherever he stepped, it was like a determination, right? That he's not going to lose, that he's going to go in full force. And I'm not saying right, I'm not saying wrong. I'm just saying history here. And we see an increase of power in the United States. How is this man, once he becomes the commander-in-chief, going to increase the power of the presidency? We will find out. So let's jot this down before you move forward. I'd like you to see what's going on here, okay? Let's look at the two graphs, okay? How much did the white male voting change in the 1820s? I want you to look right here. I want you to look right here. Here's the year, guys. It's going to go from 1824 to 1840, and this is the percentage of adult white males voting. Well, what's happening? Okay, what's happening? You don't necessarily need to jot this down, but I do want you to take a look. In 1824, you have approximately 20, give or take 25, 26%, okay, of adult white males voting. 1828, you have a roughly 55%, okay? It kind of stays here, 1832, 1836, for a little while around that, you know, over 50%, and then it just skyrockets in 1840, okay? But I want you to reference just the 1820s right now, because 1824 is the first presidential election Jackson is in. 1828 is the second, okay? In just this jump here, it basically doubles. The percentage of adult white male, okay, goes from roughly 25% to 55%. So you're adding 30%, okay? That's an incredible jump in just a single election, okay? Here's what you also need to realize. This is the voter turnout. This is the percentage, okay? So let's think about that in a moment. How does the percentage of eligible voters today compare to the age of Jackson? Well, let's take a look. This is the percent today of eligible voters, roughly right here. I mean, you've seen this up and down effect. Of course, this has been an issue for many years. When I say today, this is roughly 2008. So it's a few years ago. This is a little older. I will have to update that soon. But you could see the age of Jackson, you have around 55%. Well, here you have a little around 60. So you haven't had that much of a jump, of an incredible jump. I mean, there's some years it's been pretty high. But, guys, when you're able to start to vote, really look at the difference you can make. Let's get this number higher. Only 60% is pretty weak. Even the last presidential election, right? It was very, very weak. So this here, the jump you're going to see in 1824 to 1828 is essential for Jackson. Okay, it's essential for Jackson, who's trying to appeal to that common man of the time period. Okay, what is corrupt bargain on the left-hand side? What is corrupt bargain on the left-hand side? And if you want to follow along, go to 300, 304. Okay, at the end of these notes, you're going to go ahead and add them, right? You're going to post them like usual. At the same time, there's going to be 2 videos to watch and reflect on. And please do that in great detail, guys. Always look at my feedback. If you're not seeing my feedback, my grades, I'm grading everything. I'm giving you feedback on everything. I'm reading everything, okay? So make sure it's truthfully your own word. I'm reading every single sentence you give me. So go ahead, take a look at that work. You should be able to figure out your grade. Follow along. Look before you write, okay? But the reason why I mention that now is one of them is going to be a clip on 1824, okay? The 1824 election. What is corrupt bargain? Okay, 1824, here are the individuals. I'd like you guys to jot down these names, okay, these 4. Here are the 4 individuals who are going to run during this election. Andrew Jackson, you can follow along on 305 if you like. Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, the son of Abigail Adams and John Adams, whom you know, William Crawford, and Henry Clay. Okay, this is the election that leads to this corrupt bargain. Okay, there's 4 candidates for president in 1824. All 4 were members of the old Republican Party. Okay, yet each had support in different parts of the country. So different parts of the country supported different candidates. John Quincy Adams was very strong in the area of what we live in, New England area, so Connecticut. Henry Clay and Andrew Jackson had a greater support of the West. Think of Andrew Jackson, the westward expansion, right? We're not referencing the natives supporting Andrew Jackson. We're referencing people who went into that territory, whom Andrew Jackson helped lead into that territory in many ways, right, among others. William H. Crawford was favored in the South. William H. Crawford gets a big boost early on, but he becomes too ill to campaign, okay? Becomes too ill to campaign. So even with the support of the common man, getting elected was not easy for Andrew Jackson, okay? It was not easy because it was stopped by what is known as this corrupt bargain. If you take a look at the map, electoral votes is what you need to win, okay? Electoral votes is what you need to win. Popular vote is not how you win, okay? Popular vote are amount of votes. As you can see, Andrew Jackson, okay, Mr. Gray can see he has 99. All right. So 99 and Quincy Adams, John Quincy Adams is 84. If you'd like to jot down these numbers, if we were in the room, I'd have you jot them down. So I would suggest to do so. Okay, here's what happens, guys. This is the corrupt bargain that's going to make Andrew Jackson want to go ahead and say, you know, I'll get back at you. I'm going to come back here. Okay, John Quincy Adams, obviously he's very well known. Okay, he served as Secretary of State. He helped end the War of 1812. He's known as a very intelligent, very high moral, high standard individual, high in morals. He's uncomfortable campaigning around common people. That's the question, guys. I said people are more privileged. So Adams grows up in a very privileged family. Obviously, his father was the first vice president. His father was the second president in U.S. history. He basically had trouble to associate with the common people. He seemed very hard, very cold, very not warm at all, not a warm, fuzzy feeling. He's not somebody that would relate to just a common individual, kind of hang out, socialize. There's not much he can relate to. So he doesn't really attract to the common people, and he feels uncomfortable and doesn't really campaign amongst the common peoples, who we're going to refer them as. Henry Clay, Speaker of the House of Representatives, a very, very shrewd politician. He's a skillful negotiator. He's less popular, though, than Andrew Jackson, even though he's pretty well known. Crawford was Secretary of the Treasury. Crawford was the War Secretary. Crawford was the ambassador to France after the War of 1812. Crawford was the senator of Georgia, okay? Crawford's support, look at the list he has, but his support is basically in the Southeast. He becomes ill to campaign, okay? That's what's happening during this time. So here is the corrupt bargain. What is the corrupt bargain on the left? What is the corrupt bargain on the left? Okay, here is the corrupt bargain. Henry Clay basically got John Quincy Adams elected president in the House in exchange for a position as the Secretary of State. Okay, that's what I'd like you to make sure you jot that down. Okay, Clay is going to do the following. Okay, and 305 if you'd like to follow along. Jackson wins the popular vote. Okay, but neither candidate, guys, neither candidate is going to win, okay, more than half of the electoral votes. Neither candidate. As a result, under the Constitution, the House of Representatives, it's now thrown into the House. So when no candidate has won the majority, it gets thrown into the House. Okay. Now, the top three candidates that you have here, right? The top three: Crawford, Adams, Jackson. It's going to be one of the three. It's most likely not going to be Crawford. Okay. Here is how the House is going to vote. Let me just pull it back for a moment so you can see, because right here, guys, these are the electoral votes. Okay. You see Crawford at 41, Clay at 37, Jackson at 99, and Quincy Adams at 84. So it's going to really be between Adams and Jackson, but you're going to throw in the top three there. So in the House of Representatives, they choose, 54% of them choose that John Quincy Adams is going to be the new president. You get one vote per state, okay? You get one vote per state. 29%, so 7 states are going to vote for Jackson, and 17%, 4 states for Crawford, but 13, the majority win here, okay? Majority wins John Quincy Adams. Here is how it works, okay? Clay was out of running, right? He's not going to win. He's the Speaker of the House. Think of Nancy Pelosi as our current Speaker of the House, okay? That was his role at one time. He can influence a lot of people. That's a really, really high position, and he's highly regarded by people. So he's going to, and this is not, they're not supposed to do this, right? Clay is going to urge members of the House of Representatives, go ahead and vote for Adams. Go ahead and vote for Adams. He's going to go around and tell people to vote for Adams. Clay, very, very well regarded in the House, is going to convince people to vote, for Adams. So Adams is going to become president, okay? So what happens? What happens, guys, is Clay becomes his Secretary of State, okay? And Secretary of State was a really, really important position. Unlike, now it's very important, but back then, nearly every single Secretary of State, okay, at that time, okay, every Secretary of State, any person who had served as Secretary of State became president, okay? So Secretary of State was like that pedestal to jump up to become president. And that's what happened. So Clay would like this position. So what happens? Clay becomes the next Secretary of State. This is the corrupt bargain. Clay is basically saying, you know what, Jack Adams, I'm going to push for you in the House of Reps. I'm going to tell people to vote for you. And if you end up winning, I'd like the job as a Secretary of State. Well, what happens? Adam wins, and Clay gets the job as Secretary of State. And what happens? Andrew Jackson, he gets sent home. So imagine if you were Andrew Jackson, you'd feel like a corrupt bargain occurred. It's basically, let's say it's like having our friend Maria. She's going to run for president next year in the school, for example, okay? And we have one of her other friends, right? We have Maria's friend, Justin. Justin is going to go around, and he's going to tell Maria, tell the people, yeah, vote for her. She's going to do a lot of good for you, going around telling a lot of people, student council friends. And Justin feels that if he does that, in return, Maria should end up rewarding him with something. So maybe she's going to reward him with some position, okay, in her administration in the school. He didn't do it because he cared about Maria. He did it because he cared about himself. Justin cared about Justin. So he's going to go around and tell people to vote for Maria. Hopefully Maria wins. If she wins, then Justin's going to want his return, his position in that cabinet. So that's exactly what happened during this time, okay? It's really, really sneaky. It's a part of history that's extremely, extremely interesting as well, okay? So here's what happens. Imagine if you're Jackson and you basically got the short end of the stick, however you want to word it here. It's not fair, okay? It's not fair. Jackson knows it's not fair. Jackson doesn't want to deal with this, okay? Jackson instead needs to prove that, yeah, I can come back. I can do this, okay? Jackson's anger over Clay and others turning against him leads him to split the Republican Party, okay? Jackson splits the Republican Party, basically, okay, by forming his own party, which is known as the party title of Jacksonian Democrats. Jacksonian Democrats. This is going to be a new political party, okay? It's the conflict that's occurring between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson that's going to split. So on the left-hand side, what are Jacksonian Democrats? What are Jacksonian Democrats? Okay. Here you have Quincy Adams, okay? The Jacksonian Democrats were helped by the fact that John Quincy Adams in history is not known to do too well as president from 1825 to 1829. So there's not a, there, you know, every term, okay, is going to have some points of that we need to know. John Quincy Adams, the sixth president of the United States, 307 if you want to follow along. He thought that the federal government should adopt policies and pay for projects that would help the economy. Luckily for Andrew Jackson, okay, Jackson is going to get a boost here. You're going to want to jot this part down. So Jacksonian Democrats were helped by the fact that John Quincy Adams did not do well during that time. Today's Democratic Party, so some of you might say, I'm a Democrat or my family's a Democrat. Well, you, right, who may say that, or individuals who may say that, right, or we learn about people from the Democratic Party in years to come, the Democratic Party can trace their roots to Andrew Jackson, okay? Jackson's party here, it's known as Jacksonian Democrats. This is the beginning of the Democratic Party that we know today. Okay, Democrats opposed high tariffs. You can follow along with 308 because farmers counted on being able to sell their goods overseas and they didn't want to risk all these regulatory tariffs. Okay, so his party is going to form during this time. So you have 4 years when Adams is in office, and during those 4 years, this party is formed. And what needs to happen here? Okay. Jackson is going to feel, without a doubt, he needs to win. There's nothing like losing that first time due to that corrupt bargain. Jackson's not going to come into this to lose. Because how would that make him look? That would look absolutely ridiculous on his end if he comes in and he loses, okay? He needs to be able to come in strong here. So on the left-hand side, what is the election of 1828? What is the election of 1828? Okay, Democrats were known to be more tightly organized than Whigs, okay? Democrats had the strong support from the South, from the West, especially from small farmers and workers. All of a sudden, what you have here is in 1828, Jackson wins the presidential election, okay? Jackson does win, all right, we'll make that clear. Obviously, you know he wins. A big part of it is that the common men were able to vote. One permanent change in our nation's politics involved how campaigns were conducted. Okay, put this right here. The common man would get information, would generally only get information from mudslinging. I want you to think of the election that we had in 2016. I don't want to get into candidates or parties, okay? A 2016 election. Think about the candidates in that election. Was everybody in that election talking very nice about each other? Was everything really, they were talking well? And probably not at all. I don't think anybody would agree that was smooth. Everybody was talking nice about each other. Not really, okay? That would be known in a way. Okay, that 2016 election, in a way, I want you to look at this election for 1828 and how both candidates went against each other on an even higher level. I know some people are saying, how is that even possible? That was a pretty brutal, a lot of nasty comments were made. Again, not getting into the whole politics of the modern day, but I want you to think of back then, this is even on the greater scale, okay? You all have all this technology, all this social media. You have so much going on all at once, okay? But back then, this is a huge event, okay? Think of how big the election is now, okay? This is a really, really big, big moment in history, okay? Look right here, guys. The amount of people that went to vote in 1824 are roughly around 351,000. Okay, in 1828, you have well over 1 million. By 1840, you have well over 2 million. This is an incredible, incredible jump here. And that is going to truly, truly help Jackson. Mudslinging. Here's what I like you to jot down here. Look at the map, okay? And let me write this here. You know, it doesn't need to be word for word, but I'd like you to listen. The Constitution permits each state legislator to choose the method of electing presidential electors for its state. In 1800, the legislators in most states appointed the electors. By 1824, okay, most states had adopted more democratic systems in which electors pledged to specific presidential candidates, okay, were selected by popular vote in statewide elections. So think about the statewide elections that we have today. You know, not quite there yet, but getting to that, okay? Purple in 1800 and 1824. In purple, the vote is by legislator. This light green, by statewide popular election. Statewide popular election, okay? Think about the elections we have today that go on throughout the state. And this light orange, by popular election in districts. Think of more local elections, your districts. What you have here in just 24 years, you have more and more states voting through popular election. What we know today, popular vote. You can't win with popular vote, right? But, of course, you want to reach as many people as you can. Because if you're not winning popular vote, you're not winning votes, you're not going to win electoral vote, right? So you're going to need that as your boost. You need to connect to as many states as you can. The more states that you can get here through the electoral votes, the better. So Adams, Republican Party, Republican for life. Jackson is now Democrat, right? You have this election, which is going to get pretty ugly. This is called mudslinging. Think of outside at recess. Let's say our friend Christian, he grabs some mud. He would never do this, right? Because he's so wonderful. He grabs mud. He throws it at Quan. Oh, what happened? Quan is going to get really mad. Quan is going to grab more mud, throw it right back at him. Christian gets more and more at him. Maybe Mason's going to help his friend Christian. So then Mason's behind Christian. And then Daniel is behind Quan. And now all of a sudden mud back and forth, back and forth. That's exactly what I want you to think, okay? You see these cartoons. Here's one from the time period. It's a political cartoon that depicts the mudslinging. It's a lot of back and forth, okay? It's going to get pretty ugly, pretty brutal. They're going to say a lot of nasty comments about each other, okay? Here are some individuals, okay? You have Jackson, who wants to get back at that corrupt bargain from the 1824 election. And Adams knows he's going to face an uphill battle, okay? Jackson and Adams, those are the only two candidates here. And the campaign was a very, very bitter contest. 308, 309 if you want to follow along. Jackson supporters know what happened with Adams. They know that about that corrupt bargain, okay? These common men would attack Adams, and they would throw him as an aristocrat, a member of the upper class that they couldn't associate with. So you have members of the Jacksonian Democrats that really, really don't admire Adams much at all. They can't relate to him, okay? At the same time, Adams is going to try to hit back Jackson the same way, if not stronger, okay? He referred to Jackson as pretty dangerous. He said if Jackson became president, he would become a dictator, like Napoleon of France, and he would become this ruthless dictator. Well, where does Adams get that viewpoint from? Is because Napoleon also has military experience, so does Jackson, and, you know, Jackson pretty ruthless, so Adams is going to use that to the advantage to say that Jackson is going to become this big dictator. Jackson wins the election easily, okay? Big part is that the more the common men were able to vote. This one permanent change in the election is how the campaigns were conducted. The more modern campaign that we know of today, where these candidates go back and forth against each other. Think of right now, you know, with the whole virus and everything going on, you don't hear much of the campaign. But think about like with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, who still are campaigning, right? They're going back and forth against each other. And whatever one of the two ends up winning, okay, the primary, they're going to go against the current president. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of back and forth again, a lot of mudslinging. It gets very personal in some elections. It gets very personal in the 1828 election. You're going to want to jot this down, guys. Andrew Jackson, 178 electoral votes, and John Quincy Adams, 83. The blue, okay, the blue, Andrew Jackson. The red, John Quincy Adams. Those are the states that they carried. As you can see, John Adams connects Connecticut right here, right, New York. The Northeast is going to side with Adams and the rest of the nation at the time. Okay, this is the whole nation at the time. At the time the rest of the nation, aside from the Northeast for the most part, is going to side and vote for Andrew Jackson. Okay, I want you to take a look at the videos of the two elections, and I want you to reflect on those videos. Okay, we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a little project that we'll go ahead and come up with. And you can take a look about it now, okay? We're going to learn more about this 1828 election, how it gets pretty dirty, pretty ugly. And I want you to think of maybe a campaign poster that you could create. Let's pretend that you were running, okay, for president. It's a mudslinging campaign poster of your own. And we're going to go ahead and use some historical pieces here to think about how that's going to be done, okay? Take a look at some of these campaign posters here. Jackson is to be president and you will be hanged. So here's Andrew Jackson. He wins and he's hanging this rich aristocrat. Some account of some of the bloody deeds of Andrew Jackson. Look what Andrew Jackson did. Here you have coffins. But Andrew Jackson is has caused this. It gets pretty ugly, pretty intense. We're going to have a deep moment in this in history. For right now, don't worry about this picture or anything like this. I'd like you to focus on the two posts. Think about this moment in history, and this back and forth battle is going to really continue and leave a legacy unlike any other. Keep writing, post everything. Please make sure you're watching truthfully. Until next time, 7th, keep working carefully, and we'll see you right here.